We are in the Burns room in the House of the Temple, and we had to hunt around for a quiet place where there were no people so that we could look at this extremely precious artifact that comes with, I have to tell you, a little bit of confusion on my part, because this is the Washington Bible.
This is a Washington
Right,
Bible.
There's more than one Washington Bible. First, let's talk about this Bible and then the other Bibles that qualify as the Washington Bible.
Sure.
Because there could be a couple.
Yes.
Well, there are a couple.
There are a couple, yeah. So it's cool because there are, at least we know three, right? There are three Masonic Washington Bibles. So the one that we see here is the Federal Lodge Funeral Bible. So George Washington, when he died in 1799, there was a Masonic funeral service at Mount Vernon. This was one of those Bibles that was at his funeral service, and it was in the care and custody of Federal Lodge No. 1 of the District of Columbia. And so for several decades, in fact, the Lodge used it, for over more than 100 years, the Lodge used it as a ceremonial Bible for special events, for initiations, for all those important Masonic activities for a lodge.
Wow.
And then for some time, it was actually lost. They did not know where it was. Perhaps a past master left it at his place, and just how it goes.
Oh, yeah.
So,
there's a lot of that. There are precious Masonic artifacts in people's attics right now that some master of the lodge took home with every intention of doing something noble, probably.
Yeah.
And then it got forgotten, or he dropped dead or something.
I'm not joking. Go on eBay, and I'm sure there are precious Masonic artifacts
100%.
that people don't even realize.
100%.
Yeah. So luckily in 1909, one of the brethren of the lodge found the Bible, and there was actually a little slip of paper on it that mentioned the provenance about being part of the George Washington legacy. And so in 1909, it was refurbished, and there's this beautiful box that was included with it. And then we can show you the box a little later. And it's got the inscription of George Washington at the front. And it says Federal Lodge No. 1. It's a beautiful Bible. It's a beautiful case. And it's a very interesting history.
When people hear the term Washington Bible, the ones that would jump to my mind would be the one that he was initiated on when he became a Mason.
Right.
And then also the famous story of Washington's inauguration, when they realized, oh gosh, we don't have a Bible. Somebody run up to the local lodge and grab a Bible.
We know that the lodge has a Bible.
Right.
So, and in fact, as the story goes, the marshal of the inaugural parade was the master of that lodge, of St. John's Lodge 1. And so, of course, he said, well, actually, we can go down a couple blocks and pick up the lodge Bible. I really like the fact that from
that was in let's specify that.
Yeah.
That was in New York, right?
1789.
Yes, 1789 in New York City.
Right.
And they're getting ready to swear in Washington because Washington D.C. is not a thing yet.
Right.
So they're there. He's being sworn in as president. The previous presidents under the Articles of Confederation, those are kind of being forgotten about. Washington is going to be the first president of the United States inaugurated under the Constitution as we know it now.
Yeah. From a Masonic standpoint, of course, people, we love our threes. We love threes. And so I like that there are three Bibles associated to George Washington on three major events. So when he becomes a Mason in Fredericksburg Lodge No. 4, he places his hand on the Bible. That Bible is still in use. He then, as you said, inaugurated on Masonic Bible 1789 when he becomes the first president. And so you go from the beginning of a Mason's career when he is initiated to a very important public service where, Masonic values are inculcated. And then this Bible, the Federal Lodge Bible, present at the time of his death. So sort of Masonry is in these big parts of his life. The Bible is present in these big three parts of his life. And all those three Bibles, at least, I'm sure there are more, but at least from a Masonic standpoint, these three Bibles are actively used. They're brought out from time to time. They're not, in a sleepy little nook somewhere just collecting dust. They're actively used, which I think is very interesting.
It is very cool because it is, this is an active part of a Masonic lodge, of a Mason's life. The Book of Faith, the word of his God is an important part of any Mason's life.
Sure.
And to have one that George Washington was associated with, huge, just increases the importance of this particular book so much. Do we know much about the printing of this book? I mean, the Federal Lodge, there weren't bookstores around like we know them today that they could have wandered in and grabbed a Bible off of the shelf. Was this a custom print for them? Because a lot of lodges, in my lodge, were just about to have a new Bible put in because the old one is starting to fall apart. And I would imagine the same thing happened. They were using this one, it started to fall apart, and they said, let's get a new one. And this one got tucked away for a while. Do we know anything about this book itself?
Yeah, so one of the great things about all the three Washington Bibles are they weren't custom made. They weren't made for the occasion.
They weren't special
sort of
deals.
Yeah, and this Bible is in fact consistent with family Bibles. You know, they were big enough. Oftentimes families would, scratch their names and create a little bit of a legacy on it. There was a special page that was inserted of this Bible just to talk a little bit about the history of it when it was rediscovered. And then the masters of the lodge the master of the lodge and the officers that were associated to it. But that's really the only addition to it. You'll also notice on the side, of course, that there's those metal braces that were protecting the Bible. Mm-hmm. But no, this was not done.
So this right here.
Right, absolutely.
And I'm not wearing Chris has the white gloves on. I'm not wearing the white gloves, so I don't want to touch.
Look at you trying to get in trouble.
Hey, man, I'm not touching. Let me tell you something. When we were setting up this shot, I'll tell you a little behind the scenes, all I could figure is like the news headline is 2 idiot former Masons destroy Washington Bible. As we're like, because
we're going to be those guys.
This is not a joke. We had to walk all around the temple to find a quiet place to shoot because we don't want to just put this out while there's tours going on and people wandering around. Right. So we literally took the Bible on a small tour around the house of the temple, and I was thinking, oh my God, we're going to drop this thing down the steps and then we have to move to Canada or something. And however, we've survived thus far.
Yeah.
These little hinges, that was a common thing at the time?
Absolutely, yeah. So again, I think it's just great the fact that it's just a regular Bible. It was not created for the occasion. It was just something that the lodge was using. It was practical. It weathered well, right? It's a family Bible. It's intended to be built to last generations and generations. And so we're sort of lucky that they were able to use this Bible as part of that process. And so it really shows. I mean, even the weathered, you can still tell, the pages are well formed. There's not a lot of considerable damage to it, which speaks to the fact that this was treasured and protected well. The case is very well, and of course, the lodge took some time to put new acid-free, interior settings to protect the Bible.
Now, when you texted me this morning and said, hey, why don't we talk about this? I said, well, great, where is it? I really thought it was still over at Federal Lodge under lock and key, and you said, well, it's on loan to the House of the Temple. So how did it end up here? What's happening here? That's just time to display it for a little while?
Yeah, sure. So one of the nice things about the House of the Temple is we do have a lot of stuff that's on loan, and so one of these pieces, like this Federal Lodge Bible, is here on loan. There are various other items if you check out the museum, and so the Federal Lodge wished to place this in a spot where we know there's lots of tourists and people are interested in seeing this, and so this is why it's here. There are other artifacts from Washington's funeral, and those are actually at the George Washington Masonic Memorial in Alexandria. So we have the apron in which a brother actually carried this Bible. We also have a small little candle that was used at the ceremony, at the Masonic funeral, and that is still here, and we have that in the archives over at the memorial.
Why does Washington endure the way he does? Not a perfect man, obviously.
No.
History is certainly judging some of his sins even as we speak.
I think Washington was thrusted into a position where he created and set a precedent for what a real leadership, or what a real leader and what real leadership looks like. Students of history will know that at one point, he could have been the king of the United States. He was developed in the American psyche to become practically a king or a god if he wanted to be. But he understood the responsibility at hand. He understood that he was establishing something. And so rather than establishing a dynasty, he set a precedent based on the values of his religious beliefs as well as his Masonic beliefs, to say that, these are the things that are really important to me. These are the values that are really important to me. So I'm going to exercise those values. And so out of, leaders throughout the world and throughout the United States of history, they looked to guys like Washington and said, well, how do we do it in a way which is respectful, which is humble, which, is based on values that we can inculcate? Well, I do want to say special thanks to Federal Lodge for allowing us to take a look
absolutely.
at it.
You guys, thank you
Yeah.
so much. This is such a cool thing to have on display here, and to just get this close of a look at it is really very cool. So thank you very much, man. We'll talk again soon. If you've got a question, a comment, first of all, drop it in the link below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We're trying to crack that 5,000 mark. And also, if you're a Lodge member, give us a shout out below. And if you've got a question or a comment you don't want to leave in the comments, that's cool. podcast@scottishrite.org. Hey, if you're watching this video and you want to learn how to become a Freemason, click this video right here and it's going to give you a step-by-step process to follow on how to connect with a Masonic Lodge. And if you're already a Master Mason interested in joining the Scottish Rite, click this link right here and it's going to take you to the Scottish Rite website where you can sign up to become a Scottish Rite Mason right now.